It's time for our weekly U.S. political panel. Joining me in Washington is Politico's Louisa Savage and Paul Brandis of the West Wing Reports. Louisa, let me begin with you. Your thoughts on Trump's reaction before an official statement started coming out of New York and his conclusion that we got to get tough, folks.
Well, it was typical Trump. When does he ever wait for the facts or the information? He may turn out to be right. Perhaps there's some terrorist connection here. Perhaps it's a lone wolf, someone inspired by ISIS, but we don't know that. It could be any number of things. So he might turn out to be right. He might turn out to look foolish. Hillary Clinton taking the more traditional view, let's wait till the facts come out before we start making conclusions. But when you heard him talk, he said, we've got to get tough. We're going to put an end to this. He hasn't really come out with any proposals beyond this back and forth about whether or not he wants to ban Muslims from America or not. So it'll be interesting to see if in the upcoming debates we get any clearer idea, if he gets pressed, on what he would actually do differently than the current administration on dealing with things such as lone wolf homegrown terrorism.
Yeah, Paul, Clinton had a measured reaction, basically said, let's see the facts and go from there. Which plays better with the public? The let's get tough message, especially in the hours after something like this happens, or let's see what it was first?
Well, it's best, Carol, to start with what the polls show about this, and they do, in fact, show that Clinton is better regarded in terms of being able to handle terrorism. That is a fact. And to Louisa's point, she is right. I mean, Trump has really not given any detailed outline in terms of what exactly is it he's proposing to do in terms of getting tough. I mean, the United States spends roughly $100 billion on counterterrorism measures. A lot of that spending is hidden in sort of dark areas of the budget, but that is believed to be the figure. It is an enormous amount of money. So what exactly is Trump proposing to do on top of all of this? Is he suggesting that the New York Police Department is inept, or Homeland Security is dropping the ball here? I mean, that certainly doesn't appear to be the case last night. I think when you are dealing with a national security in terms of life and death issues, which this conceivably could have been, I think a cautiousness is probably better than impulsiveness. And again, I come back to the polls that show that most Americans think that Clinton is a little bit better than Trump in terms of handling terrorism and national security.
Louisa, do you think that today's explosion will have an impact on the race? That it will reinforce that?
Yeah. I think, number one, it depends on what comes out of the investigation. Did someone drop the ball? Was this person known to authorities and somebody didn't act? I think a lot more information will come out. And then if it turns out that the government mishandled it, there could be some repercussions. But I think this also eliminates a big challenge for Hillary Clinton. She may be the candidate with more national security experience, but if the public thinks they're unsafe, that if what we've been doing for the past 8 years here in the U.S. is not effective, then she is seen as an extension of that administration, almost a third term of Obama. So if people get frustrated, if they feel insecure and they want change, that does not help Hillary Clinton. And she has to better articulate why she would be better, more effective than whatever is the status quo. So this isn't just a slam dunk for her as a former Secretary of State at all, I would say.
Okay, let's talk about the birther issue. Can't believe I'm saying that still. While it's long been proven U.S. President Barack Obama was born in the U.S., the so-called birther conspiracy has persisted and fueled largely by Donald Trump until this past week. Here's Trump on Thursday.
President Barack Obama was born in the United States, period. Now, we all want to get back to making America strong and great again.
Louisa, I'll start with you. Why did he feel he had to say that?
Well, I think you see the polls tightening. You see Trump actually thinking he has a chance at this, and he has to make Republicans comfortable with him. And there are a lot of people who just see him as a fringe figure, and he's trying to put this behind him. The problem is it's really difficult to move away from something that you've spent years building your political profile on, which was, let's call it for what it is, a lie about President Obama, an attempt to insinuate he was an American, that he was born in Kenya, that maybe he was a Muslim, all these things. He's been doing this for years, so one press conference doesn't suddenly distance you from it. And he's trying to hurt Hillary Clinton with African-American voters by saying that somehow she started this rumor, which was another lie. So I don't know if this press conference really helped him in any way. It just drew attention to the fact that this conspiracy theory was central to the way that Donald Trump got to be in the public eye and built a political movement around himself.
Paul, why do you think he did it? And let me just, for the audience, reiterate, nobody was allowed to ask a question afterwards. He said it, moved on, left the stage, and people were trying to ask him about it. Eventually, I assume the debates will take care of this, or perhaps other interviews. But Paul, what do you think was behind it?
Well, it wasn't even a press conference. It was really just a big promotion for his new hotel here. And people got, these TV journalists got sort of suckered into coming. They said, well, it's going to be a major announcement. The major announcement was that his hotel 5 blocks from the White House is up and running. And he later took folks on a tour and this and that. But he took no questions about this. And this is an issue that really gave, pardon the pun, gave birth to his entire campaign in the first place. He spent 5 entire years talking about this, and then he tried to swat it away with one sentence, as if the last 5 years simply did not exist. It's one of the biggest lies he's ever told, and that is really saying something, by the way. 5 years talking about it, tries to dismiss it with simply one line. I think he's obligated to explain why did you perpetuate this for 5 years, and why are you backing away from it? And now perhaps it will come up during the debate, but this is really part of his MO. He simply says things that are not true. And I've mentioned this before, but it's worth mentioning time and again that the independent research group PolitiFact has analyzed what presidential candidates, politicians, in fact, in general, have said over the last couple of years. They have concluded, and again, this is a neutral outfit, that about 3/4 of what Trump has said in the past is either 1, an outright lie, or 2, a partial lie. 3 out of 4 things. Clinton, meantime, about 1 out of 4. They're both dishonest, in other words, but he is so much more so. I think people really need to pay more attention to stats like that.
Okay, well, but the polls show that it's not having an impact. In fact, the polls seem to show that everything's tightening. A number of new polls show the race for the White House will be a close one. A far cry from a month ago when some surveys gave Hillary Clinton a double-digit advantage. Take a look at the polls. And just one example, a recent CBS poll has Clinton with just a 2-point advantage, 46 to 44%. However, when third-party candidates Gary Johnson and Jill Stein are included, Clinton and Donald Trump appear to have roughly the same support at 42%. Paul, why this tightening race? And given especially what you're saying is that a lot of what Donald Trump asserts is false.
Well, there's no question that Trump has significant momentum right now. As you say, he's pulled even, or pretty much even with Clinton on a national basis. Even more disturbing for the Clinton campaign, he is now ahead in a couple of these very key swing states, including the 2 biggest ones, Florida and Ohio. This is a real problem for Clinton. One of the other big problems for her, by the way, and this, I think, helps explain his rise in the polls, is this so-called enthusiasm gap. Clinton supporters are simply not as excited or enthusiastic about supporting her as his supporters are about voting for him. That is a really big problem for her. If she can't get her folks motivated enough to get off their rear ends and go to the polls on Election Day, that is really bad news for her. So the enthusiasm gap, I think, is really driving that. But the other thing is that Trump has really gotten to be a much more buttoned down professional candidate in the past month. He's gotten more serious. Kind of a low bar to begin with for him, but he's gotten more serious. He's talking, he's laying out policy proposals. He's not flying off the cuff like he used to be. And I think that that is reassuring some Republicans who had misgivings about him in the first place. But so I think those are probably the 2 main reasons that are tightening the polls here. Clinton really has some really serious problems here that she has to deal with.
Louisa, sometimes I hear you take all of this together, the fact that Donald Trump tells a lot of lies on the campaign trail, and then you see Gary Johnson, someone like Gary Johnson, you know, be asked about Aleppo, and he goes, "What's Aleppo?" And I wonder if Hillary Clinton, at the end of the day, sometimes goes home and bangs her head against the wall and says, "Why do I have to work so hard?"
Yeah, good question. Well, I think if you look a little more deeply into those polling numbers, when the additional candidates, including Gary Johnson, are calculated, you see that the problem Hillary Clinton is having are young voters. They're the ones who, they don't like Trump, but if they have an alternative to Hillary Clinton, they pick that alternative. And that was a very key group of the Obama coalition that helped him win the presidency twice. So the challenge for the Clinton campaign is how to bring on those young voters, those people who supported Bernie Sanders. They're not quite into the Hillary Clinton camp yet. They want big systemic change. She represents solid, incrementalist, central, centrist Democrat approach. That's not what they want. So the challenge for the campaign is how to talk to them. And I would suspect you'll see them go after issues, for example, such as climate change, which is a big deal for millennials. And there's a big difference between Donald Trump, who wants more coal, more traditional energy, and Hillary Clinton on this issue. So they have opportunities to try and change those numbers, and it's a challenge for them. And secondly, this is a very polarized country. There are a lot of Republicans who just cannot stomach Hillary Clinton. They don't ever want to vote Democratic. They might hold their nose and vote for Donald Trump. They'll turn out to try and get Republican senators elected. So this was always going to be a close race. And she had a very bad week. Let's not forget, she called half of Donald Trump's supporters deplorables. She collapsed last weekend at a 9/11 celebration. She got a lot of bad press. That's reflected in the polls. So she has her work cut out for her, but still advantage Clinton overall so far.
And how much, Louisa, do you think Barack Obama is helping her?
He's trying. He's someone, both he and Michelle Obama, a very popular first lady, have been out on the campaign trail and making the case that, look, if you want to keep the Obama legacy, if you want to keep Obamacare, work on climate change and so forth, then you need to elect Hillary Clinton. So he'll be working with African-American audiences, with young audiences, and trying to bring back that coalition that got him elected. And again, the problem is, to a lot of people, it looks like she's running for his third term, and it's very, very hard to be elected after a two-term president of the same party, just historically. So she also has to say why people should vote for her and what she would do differently.
Okay, let's assume there's no more fainting spells, there's no more shooting from the lip from Donald Trump, which I doubt will happen. That is a big assumption, and probably a foolish one as well, I am the first to admit. But what are you both looking forward to as the next big moment in this campaign?
Well, there's no question that the next big moment is 1 week away, and that is the first debate. Clinton, being the lawyer that she is over preparing for it. She's been studying for months. We've been told, practicing attack lines and focusing on these wedge issues that she can use against Trump. Climate change is a big one, for example. To Louisa's point, I mean, younger voters do, in fact, believe in rather significant numbers that that is a serious issue. Trump calls climate change a hoax, so that is a good example of something that she can use to really show the difference between the two of them. So the debate is really the big issue. And let me come back to something real quickly, Carol, about what the president can do. You know, I work in the White House, and I actually talked to the president's press secretary the other day about this, and I pointed out that the president has really only done about 1 or 2 events on Clinton's behalf so far. He has not been to Florida. He has not been to Ohio, and we've got about 7 weeks to go here. So what is the president going to do? They actually have a lot of travel to those places lined up in the next couple of weeks. They haven't really talked about it yet, but those things are in the works. And in the last week, he's spoken to the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. Last night, he gave this fire and brimstone speech to the Congressional Black Caucus. I think he's really going to try and fire up these folks to get out and vote, because they are not as enthusiastic, again, about her as they were about himself back in 2008 or 2012. So I think that's what we're going to see the president do.
All right. Well, we have to leave it there for time. Louisa Savage of Politico and Paul Brandis of West Wing Reports will have lots to talk about next weekend for sure, just before that debate takes place. Pleasure talking to you again. Thanks for being with me.
Thank you.